Good morning, valuable physical education. We're back again today with Ms. Haley Whyte, adapted physical education teacher. And today she gives us some stories of some of her experiences with students and some of the rewarding ones, and also helps break down how she makes adjustments for some of her students. It's a great section of the interview. And afterwards, I want to talk about one of the students I've had in the past and the impact that it made on my life. But first, let's hear what Miss Haley has to say.
There's one girl that I have recently, and she has a whole body cerebral palsy, so it affects all her extremities. But she can still walk. So she uses a gait trainer, which is basically this massive contraption that she gets to kind of sit in, and it's a saddle, and it lifts her upright so she can still walk with assistance. So it's basically like a big walker. For her, which is really cool. And so there's a lot of times where she kind of gets down on herself. But again, with that whole like, hey, I've seen you do this before, and you gotta tell your mind to tell your body to do this. And so being able to really motivate her, and then you just see her kind of like light up of, oh yeah, you're right. Like I can do it. And so just making sure, like I've been telling her day in, day out, every time I see her, you need to tell your mind you can do it, because when you tell your mind you can't do it, guess what? You're not going to be able to do it. So I said we need to change that attitude of I can do it. So, and ever since she's been saying I can do it, I can do it, and as she's walking, and so we've been able to increase her walking, increase her pacing, to where now she's, I think, walking for 2 minutes straight, which has been night and day from when I first saw her when she's a freshman, and she's a junior now. So it's been really great to see that growth.
Yeah, that's awesome to hear. And you know, uh, one of my things that I find fascinating recently in this global pandemic is I find myself calling a lot of general physical education teachers, and this is one of the reasons this show kind of started a little bit. Is we're always picking their brain, like, what are you doing during COVID? Like, and then we talk, and are they're doing this and that. What are some of the things you're doing, Coach, during the pandemic for Zoom or your students to make sure that they're meeting their needs?
Yeah. For my students that are on Zoom, or we're giving asynchronous lessons to them, if they can't make the Zooms, we'll record the Zooms, and then we'll do a lot of PowerPoints have been my big go-to. A lot of video recording, doing a green screen, putting a backdrop, making it very, very kid friendly. So it's something enjoyable. So they're not just seeing, a bunch of, background things that it has nothing to do with the lesson. So definitely a lot of themed activities for the students, and then also, like I said, a bunch of recordings of us going through the skills. And we're assuming that the parents are there helping, and obviously, as a parent, you're kind of like, well, what do I do? Like this isn't, like you guys have said, like you're not adapted PE, you're general ed PE. How do we do this? And even for us, it's there's times where we're like, well, how do we do this? And we go back and forth. So a lot of it too has just been even just modifying it for the parents and showing the parents, hey, if they can't do this, or if they're not demonstrating this at home, this is the next, this is what we can do to take it a step back. So also, you're not just teaching the students right now, you're also teaching the parents of, hey, this is what they can do, at least if they're not able to meet um, this skill set right now.
Yeah,
So
well, Coach, I mean, to me, that's so inspirational because I think you're really truly bridging the gap between, like, I think that's completely understandable that the parents would like looking like, what do we got to do? Like same with me. Like I would be, coach me up, coach. And I just think that what a great, valuable lesson you as a teacher. Not only are you teaching and providing curriculum to your students, but you're also bridging that gap between the student and their parent for their curriculum needs. So that to me, that's really cool. And just keep up the good work. That's awesome.
thank you.
Yeah, I mean, my hope is through all this that some teachers are realizing that there's a lot of teachers send home a lot of homework, but the parents don't necessarily have the tools to help them with it. And, I know right now I've heard a lot of people paying for tutors and extra help in order to try and bridge that gap. But there's so many resources out there now. It is a matter of just kind of teaching the parents sometimes about where they can even find those resources so they're not having to pay a whole lot. And again,
Right.
for something like that, giving them a, kind of a game plan of how to go about helping their child. So I definitely, that's a really important thing to do right now. And I know that's something I've been having to do in my job description this year is work with families more. And it is amazing how many times that they're just, they seem lost, and you're trying to go, well, I'm supposed to be teaching a kid. Like I'm still trying to figure out how to parent myself. So, we'll work on it, but I think it's eye-opening to know that communication is really important with families. So.
Yeah, and that's one thing that I've noticed that's been a huge increase is just the parent contact that I've had and being able to make, not even just between, having a now connection with the student, I now have had a connection with the parent, which is even more meaningful to me because now when I go into the IEP meetings that we were talking about, it's no longer, who are you? Or like, hey, I don't remember. It's been a full year since I last saw your face. It's now a more personal connection of like, hey, how are you doing? Like, and being able to have that connection with the parent, which I think is so important because then they can come to you. And I've had parents say, hey, like, I'm trying this at home. It's not working. What can I do? Or what's something else I can do because this, this direction isn't working. So, or hey, I don't have this equipment. Like, what do I do if I don't have equipment? And so we've actually, our department's made a YouTube channel, and we when we first were out of school in spring, we actually did a lot of videos of, hey, if you don't have, a ball to hang so they can, practice swinging a bat or something or striking something with your hand, fill bag up with water and hang it up outside. You can get a bungee cord, just giving them all different types of resources, because you also have to think of, hey, not everyone has, a basketball at home. So it's like, how do we work on this? Or, you can practice different things using different things of, I don't know for you guys, but the drumming with the big yoga balls, that's been a huge thing. Well, not everyone has a yoga ball at home, so let's use a pillow instead, or let's even just use our hands on our laps. So that's been really, really neat to help families, being able to guide them in that way too.
Yeah. It's exciting, and the way your mind is working and you're modifying things and you're expressing that in this interview, I think is really exciting. And then like one thing we talked about earlier tonight is like at one point we'll want to have some of these coaches back on, because I think we could go for a whole segment of like, hey coach, how do you modify, them in general PE working on catching a ball and, hand-eye coordination. How do you do it to modify it for this type of student in your class? And I bet you could give some sound advice, but on my end, coach may have more, but I've been thoroughly impressed while interviewing you and chatting with you. I think you're honestly very passionate about your profession. And one thing that's just cool for me is I'm very close and know the coaches that you played for in college, and I could just kind of see that they've helped shape you a little bit. And I'm sitting here also, I've been lucky to go to a few professional development stuff, and like listening to Sue Lindquist, and she was the UCLA softball coach that won a lot of national championships. And she was big on like positive talk, which you talked about tonight. Like, you can do it. You can do this. You're going to be good at it. You're going to be successful. And it seems like you have a lot of nuggets of wisdom for these children. And, I don't have children, but if I have two nieces, and if they needed to do adapted PE, I would certainly want them to be in your class under your tutelage. So thank you so much for being on the show. And coach might have some other questions for you, but I'm really glad you came on.
Well, thank you. Appreciate you guys having me.
Yeah, I don't right at this point have any more questions. I just, I'm with Kevin. I'm very impressed with, again, obviously the knowledge that you have about doing this and the passion that you have for it. And you're bringing up lots of memories of kids that I've had throughout my time. And again, I know how rewarding it is to help those students that need a little extra, and that's not always kids who are on IEPs or even 504 plans. That's all different types of kids, but especially some of those kids that struggle. And when I think sports and physical activity just brings out, it can really bring out the best of everybody if it's done right. And so I think that's awesome that you're helping these kids do that, because it's really important. I just think I'm certainly a huge advocate for physical education. I think it's really important. I think it's sad when it's getting cut, or when it's, you're getting students added in or students pulled out because it's not deemed as important. And so,
Right.
having somebody there advocating for these students and helping them through it is really important. So thank you so much for what you're doing. And we really appreciate it. And we appreciate you coming on tonight and talking to us.
Yeah, of course. Like I said, thanks for having me.
Yep.
Okay. Again, a big thank you to Miss Haley Whyte for being on with us. And, I was being very honest when she was talking. It was hard to come up with new questions because I wasn't really ready for all these different feelings and emotions to come back, kind of rushing in about students I'd had in the past that have had either IEPs or have had disabilities that I've worked with. And there's one in particular that I have to tell the story. We talked about it after the interview was done, but I had a student who actually we ended up naming an award for physical education at our school after her. And she had cerebral palsy, and she was one who she could walk on her own, unlike the student that Miss White was talking about. But she had a hard time walking. Very easily would get tired. She's a student who had a hard time with speech as well. But thankfully, I was at a school where I'm still at the school where they, the other kids were very accepting and very helpful. But we named this PE award after her we give it out each year for the student who works the hardest. And the reason for that was she would never say no to any challenge. I was always willing to give modifications. I was always willing to try and help her be successful, but she always wanted to do what everybody else was doing, even when it was next to impossible. And, when we would run the mile, it was extremely difficult for her to finish that long of a distance running, but she loved to run and she always pushed herself. And so, it just showed me that, again, too often we have kids that complain about the mile, that complain about exercise. And, here's this student who has a hard time doing this, has every reason in the world to give excuses, and she refused to do that. And so, again, I just think moving forward as physical educators, we need to continue to try and remember those students. We need to talk to each other about those types of students. And, we need to use that as motivation for ourselves, but we can also use it as motivation for other students. So, again, a huge thank you again for this interview this week. It really made me think a lot about, where I'm at with physical education, how important adapted physical education is, and we need to continue to have these conversations about these amazing students that are willing to work so hard, and that's not just students that have disabilities. I've had plenty of other students that do that, but this was just one in particular that came up that again, extremely special student that I've had, and I can think of others as well, but it just it was a great interview, and I think that adapted PE is important. I think physical education is important, and I think we're seeing that now that health and physical education is going to be even more important moving forward, and I hope we can put some emphasis on that. So thank you guys so much for a great week, and we look forward to having more physical education talk coming up. I want to thank our sponsor, One Stone Apparel. They do great physical education clothes, made us this great polo for valuable coaching, and they do awesome vocabulary tees. Perfect for physical education. They got great words on the back. You can customize them. Great artwork. Easy to work with. Dave at One Stone Apparel. Check them out, onestoneapparel.com.